Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Seed Speaks. My name is Ashley Robinson, and I'm the editor of the Alberta Seed Guide. Today, I'll be acting as your host for this episode. Today, we're going to be talking about stepping up to the leadership challenge and being on ag boards. And we have a few guests here today to discuss this with us. So thank you to Wayne Gale, Mike Ammeter, and Ashley Knapton for joining us. And to those watching, please don't hesitate to ask any questions you may have for our guests in the chat box. So let's start with getting to know our panelists. So Wayne, I know you're the past chair of ASTA and also the current president of Stoke Seeds. Can you please tell me a bit more about yourself?
So Stoke Seeds is a flower and vegetable distributor. So we purchase seed from suppliers all over the world and distribute them mostly to commercial growers and some home gardeners here in Canada. But we also distribute to commercial growers vegetables throughout Canada, BC to Newfoundland, and along the U.S. East Coast. We've got 5 locations in the U.S. as well. And we also supply flower seed to the garden centers for them to plant and give you the finished goods. So we have a mail order business as well. Multi-generational. I'm third generation. The company was established in 1881. It was a U.S. company, and then my grandfather, who was a salesman, purchased it, and then here we are today.
Thank you. And Mike, thank you so much for being here. So I know you're a farmer, but you're also quite involved in the canola industry. So can you tell me a bit more about yourself?
Sure. We are a third generation Canadian grain farm. Sylvan Lake is the area which is about halfway between Edmonton and Calgary out here in Alberta. And I am currently a director with the Alberta Canola Commission. And through that, I am a director on the Canadian Canola Growers Association, which I also happen to be the chair currently. And I mean, that's not the extent of my board involvement, but that's kind of the canola world right now for me.
Thank you. It's great to have people like yourself involved. And that leads us to our last guest, Ashley. I know you're involved with the dairy industry, but you're also involved with a lot of different ag boards. So can you tell me a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So I am based here in Eastern Ontario, where my day job is working with Corteva AgriScience as a strategic dairy accounts manager. So I work focusing on agronomy and nutrition to support our producers in making the best feed that they possibly can for their cattle, both dairy and beef. Outside of that, my family and I have a small dairy farm here just in the Ottawa Valley, where we enjoy working with our cattle there. And then through my time in the industry, I've certainly had an opportunity to be involved in a wide array of boards, and a number that just kind of seems to keep on growing once you kind of people appreciate the keenness. You seem to get asked more and more. So I have a wide array of boards that I have the opportunity to participate in.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And let's get into asking some questions. So Wayne, can you tell me a bit more about ASTA's leadership setup and how the organization works to encourage and develop its members' leadership skills?
So so the American Seed Trade Association has a pretty traditional setup. We have what we call the president and CEO, which is Andy Levine. It's a hired personnel. He has a full complement of staff, about 8-10 at least staff members that cover everything from meetings, communications, lobbying. And under that, we have what we call the executive. We have a chair is Brad May, and then there's 2 past chairs, of which I'm one of those past chairs at the current. So there's three chairs, 1 current and 2 past, and the past obviously circle off. Now, a little bit unusual there, but I think the association felt that there was some good legacy information that can be still maintained by having the past chairs a little longer than a traditional 1-year term. Under that structure is what we call the regional vice presidents, and those VPs represent different regions of the U.S. and there's 9 of those regional VPs covering the different regions. Then under that, or along with that, is the board. And then the board represents a lot of the different crop types and some of the specialty groups. So that's where you get your crops and specialty groups. And your different important interest groups that include in the American Seed Trade Association. One of the important parts of that structure is the nominating committee. As a past chair, I'm part of the nominating committee, and what we've done this last 2 years is taken a real look at who we're bringing in on the executive committee and trying to almost cultivate members into those positions. So we're looking at potential members as much as 2 and 3 years out, identifying those people, and then trying to kind of coach them into positions that broaden their knowledge about the seed industry. Myself, being a vegetable seed person, I really don't have a lot of the knowledge and sometimes appreciation of some of the other crops. So being on attending some of the broader meetings like biotech and intellectual property exposes me to those other crop kinds. And that's what we're doing, is trying to cultivate some of these potential regional VPs. And then, of course, we have our membership leadership training. So we have our ASTA Leadership Summit, which is going to be in June 25th in Indianapolis. And what we've done is we've put together a program that we've tried to identify certain key training opportunities and then blend it with a viewpoint of the seed industry. So some of the things that we've got this year is leading through technology, critical thinking, leading through global market volatility. And one that I'm definitely going to be attending is Workforce of the Future. We also have some key speakers. Cheryl Connolly, who is going to be our guest speaker. She is manager of global consumer trends and future at the Ford Motor Company. So you can see that we really want to spend time training our members or giving education opportunities for our members, and with the goal of them being stronger leaders, not only in their own companies, but within the association as well. Myself, I've been on the ASTA board and executive on and off, I think for close to 12 years in total. And I find it very rewarding, and I feel it has really enhanced my leadership skills and sort of put me in the same room as some of the really important people within the seed industry. So I've really enjoyed my time at ASTA. And also with CSTA, I was also a past chair of the Canadian Seed Trade Association. Much can be said about the Canadian Seed Trade, which is now Seeds Canada. Their organization is a little bit different, but nevertheless accomplish the same.
Yeah, you guys, I really find it interesting all the stuff you guys do at ASTA to be able to help people develop those leadership skills. So I'm looking forward to chatting a bit more about that. And Mike, as you mentioned, you're involved with quite a few boards. I know specifically with the canola industry, which is how I came to ask you today. But can you just tell me what made you really want to get involved with the industry in a leadership role and be able to join these boards?
I think when I started way back, many years ago, before I was even on the board, I just saw the opportunity to be part of my industry. I'm a grain farmer, and nothing fancy, not a huge operation, but it's my industry. And yeah, I saw the opportunity to do that. So my previous life, if you will, or prior to the canola industry, I was on the Alberta Barley Commission's board of directors for 2 terms, which is 6 years, and I chaired for a couple of years. And when my term was done, I knew I wasn't done yet. I enjoyed what I was doing. I saw value in that, and it's all about service, from my perspective. That's why we're there. We're trying to serve our industry and fellow farmers, if you will. And so I had an opportunity to come over to the canola world, and there was an opening. I got on the board, and I also wanted to take a look at a national level. I'd never been on a national board, like the CCGA that I'm on currently, and I was just intrigued by that. Just more opportunities at a national level and a little higher level. And once again, to me, it's about service, and that's basically why I'm here, why I got or how I got here, and kind of my philosophy of being here.
Thanks, Mike. Really interesting. And Ashley, one of the reasons I asked you to be on this discussion was because I came across a thread you posted on Twitter discussing how to get more young people to join boards. And you really made a lot of great points in that thread. So can you tell me a bit, give me a bit of a summary of what you talked about on that thread?
Yeah, for sure. That thread kind of came as a result of, a question I get asked a lot, which is, how do you get more young people like you on boards? And I kind of can think of as many boards as I sit on, right from local all the way up to provincial level. They're all the same and they're all different all at the same time, right? So I kind of tried to pull together some common themes that I certainly knew were pressure points for me in terms of what has made it challenging for me to sit on boards, and certainly friends and colleagues that I've had an opportunity to chat with. And then the feedback from that has been certainly overwhelmingly positive. We're not alone on that front. It seems more common, regardless of age or diversity. It seems to be a challenge for all of them. So, one of the first things that I highlighted was being upfront with the time commitment. One of the points that I made was, certainly folks of my generation, we're at a really interesting point in our lives, right? We're growing our families, we're starting to take on bigger roles on our family farms, or we have full-time jobs because we're not full-time farmers yet. And so those are all kind of hurdles in a lot of cases. If an employer is not as supportive of a board that an individual really wants to go after, that can be certainly a barrier that's going to prevent them. Training is huge, right? I think that we certainly have organizations for youth like 4-H and junior farmers and all those kinds of groups that are fantastic, but it's still a huge jump to go from those to regional or provincial boards. And the other thing is governance is a game changer in my opinion. It makes all the difference on a lot of boards, and having good governance can make everyone's lives easier. So one of the other things that I kind of wanted people to recognize is that folks who are involved often get asked to do more, right? Like, what's that saying? If you want something done, ask a busy person. And my hope is that it's not lost on me that as someone who tweeted about being really busy, it's resulted in me having another commitment here today, right? But if I look around, I see a lot of other young folks or keeners just like me who would be just as qualified to sit on this committee or this panel, any committee, any board as I am. So if we can kind of start to drive some of that diversity by allowing people to sit on these wider spokes of boards, not tap into the same 10 people every time. I think that's going to be good for everyone's longevity. And then just, the last thing was kind of respecting new ideas. I think that when you're asked to sit on a board, you're excited, you come bring all these ideas, and it can be really discouraging to say, oh, we've already tried that or we thought about that. To me, if it's being brought up again, there's probably a reason, right? There's something that next generation, that new board member sees that needs to be discussed. And so take that time to really think it through, provide them rationale instead of saying, no, we've already done that. What else do you have? That's going to be a quick deterrent for some folks. So there was lots of good ideas that kind of came as a result of that thread too. Some folks highlighting that Zoom, as much as we're all tired of it, certainly makes our lives easier in terms of trying to get to meetings in some cases, especially if they're a larger board with more travel, talking about just that upfront, talking about norms, what boards expect. Every board's different. So it was far more positively received than I expected. So.
Yeah, definitely. I know I read through it and I really found it interesting. And one of the points there that you said, and I myself, I'm on some boards too. So all of you guys have full-time jobs, whether it's working on farms or working different offices and stuff. So how do you balance having a full-time job and still being able to be involved in these industry commitments? I'll open up to whoever feels like taking the shot at it first.
I think the one for me is managing expectations on all sides, right? So managing expectations of the board, being really clear how committed you are, what kind of things eat your time. For me, I'm really seasonal, right? So spring planting coming up, corn silage harvest in the fall, those are some of my really hectic times. And so just kind of making sure everyone's up front at the beginning to know where things are at. And then it kind of also comes back to that, hoping that people are being really honest with their time requirements of you, instead of saying, oh, it's not too bad, or it's a couple meetings a year. How many meetings per year? Where are they? How long are they? Are they Zoom an option? Is there homework? Is there going to be work outside of those meetings? Just kind of laying those things out nice and early is a good way to kind of help everyone fit things into their schedules.
Mm-hmm. And I think I saw Wayne turned on his mic there, so please take it away.
Yeah, I'm lucky. We have a reasonable sized corporation, so I've got a really good support crew here. During my terms as the Canadian Seed Trade Chair and the American Seed Trade Association Chair, I brought on an executive assistant in order to help me manage my day-to-day activities. And then I have a fabulous wife who I still don't know why she's still married to me after dragging her through so many different board positions and conventions from the time the kids were only 2 or 3 years old up until now they're in their 30s. So yeah, a good support group is essential. If you don't have support group, then it's going to be an uphill slog.
Really good points. And Mike, do you have anything to add there?
Well, just a little different scenario than Wayne just described. I farmed by myself, and my first number of years, 3 young kids at home, and had an off-farm job and boards. It just wasn't going to happen. So, is when it really started for me was once our youngest got her driver's license, and so that freed up the shuffling and chauffeuring around. And I said to my wife, I'd like to step up at a board level, and that's kind of how you start. But yeah, it's tough when you have small kids at home and you're trying to do everything on your own. But back to how do you do it? It's just you understand the commitment you made, you balance it. Both of the canola boards that I sit on, the board members are all producers, farmers, and so we're obviously as I think Ashley mentioned about being seasonal. eh, you know, if something's on fire in May, call me. If something's on fire in September, October, you can call me. Other than that, don't bug me because I'm really busy with the farm. But we get the winter season, November, December into April is quite busy for us, and a bit more so in the summer. We do pick it up in the summer again, but so we do have that flexibility. But yeah, you know what? I made a commitment to step up to a board, and sometimes it takes a little bit of a juggling schedules, and sometimes you miss something here, and sometimes you miss something there. But as long as it's not detrimental to your organization or your commitment, it usually works out pretty good.
Some really great points there, Mike. And I think that ties into kind of what Ashley was saying when we're looking at some of those younger people that want to be involved, but it's just life commitments and stuff. When you're looking at how your time is in your life, there's busier times of your life than there are others. So that is one thing that you have to keep in mind. Maybe when you are in one of those leadership roles and you're looking for more people to join your board, which I think plays really good into the next question I want to ask, which is, what do you guys find hold people back sometimes from joining boards?
I'd say time, as Mike said. There's a lot of people who don't have, the support group that I have. So time is a real and commitment. You get to the point where you can stretch yourself so thin, and then you got to say no to a board opportunity. So I think those are two. The bigger problem in many cases is finding people. I know on any board that I've been on, finding people who want to be on the board is also, I guess that's the flip side of your question. But can be difficult for being on the nomination committee to get people that are willing to spend the time.
Yeah, Wayne, 100% correct. Trying to find people. Um, and sometimes, there's fear and trepidation. I say, I don't know what, if you've never been on a board before, it's like, gee, I don't know what I'm signing up for. And um, so you maybe a bit of hesitancy there. And I think quite often, for the most part, once people get on a board, you get comfortable with it, you learn your role, learn your organization, that takes some of that away, and you do, uh, I mean, you get enjoyment out of it, really, if for myself anyhow. Um, but yeah, it's a challenge to get people uh, to be able to find that time slot to fulfill a commitment like sitting on a board.
Mhm.
I think training is another big opportunity. I mean, I certainly echo time. Undoubtedly, that's a finite resource that we all wish we had a lot more of. I think a lot of times, but I think in some cases, especially thinking of people who don't sit on a ton of boards, new, like young or not, it could be intimidating, kind of like Mike said there. So being upfront with training and what kind of what folks are going to get out to it as much as what they're going to put into it, I think that's a good opportunity to just set members up for success right from the beginning. And even there's some organizations that I've been a part of where they've offered training long before they've ever approached me to sit, on a board or a committee. And so that's a really nice opportunity for me to go and tip my toes in other boards before I kind of maybe come back to this one that might be a little bit bigger. But training is a huge opportunity, not just training in terms of, what this board is about and what subject matter, but governance is huge in my opinion.
All really good points. And I think that plays into the next question I want to ask. And I think it also plays into some of the stuff that Wayne was saying before with how ASTA has their leadership summit set up. So if I'm watching this broadcast right now and I'm thinking, I potentially maybe want to get involved with boards, but there's one that I maybe have my eye on or something. But is there a way for me to maybe dip my toe in or to be able to learn more? Like, how would you guys what advice would you have for people that want to do some research and look into potentially showing interest in joining a board without getting given the president role right off the bat?
Actually, I'm thinking I need a scroll across the bottom of my screen that says, please call me, and we'll have a chat. We're always trying to reach out to people who would like to be engaged. And, can I allay some of your fears? I don't know what getting onto a board means, that type of thing. But we have excellent training inside of Alberta Canola, as well as there's some national training that's available on some of the ag boards. And but I think probably the quickest way or the easiest way, if you've got in your mind, I'd really like to do this, reach out to find a local board member of a commission that you're interested in, and just give them a quick shout and start the conversation there, and get the ball rolling, if you will.
ASTA and Seeds Canada, they have annual meetings and regular meetings. So what I used to do when I've been on nominating committees or a chair and looking for a new chair to come up behind me is attending some of the committee meetings, asking questions, and volunteering, perhaps at the committee level, which are usually pretty easy, because normally committee meetings there's this sort of blank stare saying, okay, we need somebody to be the secretary for next year, and everybody kind of hides. So usually that's a pretty easy way of getting involved. But I think you need to be noticed in some of the cases where there are meetings. Perhaps in some of the commissions and that there may not be as many opportunities. But on the associations, there's usually an annual meeting and or subsequent meeting. So getting involved is always the first step.
I agree that committees are a nice way to kind of, dip your toe into some of the boards without getting all in necessarily. And I think maybe the onus is also on us as maybe more seasoned board people to step back and say, oh, well, like, let's not jump on anyone who jumps or who asks a question the first time, like, oh, fresh meat, new blood, let's go. So let's kind of, moderate our excitement so we don't scare folks off. Let's kind of make sure we alleviate all their fears. Like Mike had said, let's make sure we kind of go through those things right off the hot. Because I know that, there've been boards where I've kind of casually mentioned interest in, and then suddenly I'm on that person's phone call, every time the board comes up with an open position, and I'm at the point where I can't take on anything else right now. That's not a no forever. That's just a no for right now. Certainly let's stay in touch long term. And so kind of recognizing, it's our responsibility too to recognize what other folks have going on and manage our excitement accordingly.
I think those are all really good points. And you kind of played into a question we got from the audience there about talking about, has there ever been any situations where you've had to say no to board commitments? And then my own follow-up on that is, how do you do that if you're someone where you get the call or you're at the AGM and one of the board member comes up to you and like, hey, will you join the board? Like, how do you say no? Or maybe, like you said, no right now, but maybe in the future.
Yeah, I've had to do that. I got asked to be chair of ASTA for about 5 years prior to finally accepting, and it's difficult. I always kind of say, well, yeah, I'm a little busy right now, and maybe try a little later. So yeah, it's difficult to say no, but sometimes you just have to. You got to look at your time and look at your personal life and just say, hey, I can't handle it right now. I'm very flattered. Thank you very, very much. But maybe come back to me in a year or two.
Yeah, I certainly am a big fan of no right now. One of the biggest learning curves for me as I've started to kind of grow into some of these boards is, when the opportunity came up, I thought, oh, I can't miss it. This is an opportunity. I can't say no. Those opportunities come back around. I'm going to tell you that right now. They certainly, when there is such a shortage of board members, you're probably going to get asked again. So certainly don't feel pressure to take something on that is not going to be a right fit ever, or certainly in the short term on timing for sure. The other thing I've started trying to do is have some names in my back pocket to recommend. And that's kind of a multi-sided thing. That's to help the board that's looking for someone out to kind of say, no, I'm really flattered. Let's chat again in 3 to 5 years. But here's someone who might be able to fill that gap for you. But then it's also a good opportunity for me to get other folks who I'd really like to kind of step up into positions who I think are really highly qualified, who are exciting individuals, kind of maybe champion some of that diversity. That's a nice way for me to use some of my connections to really to amplify them. So that's also helped soften the blow when you have to let someone down.
Mike, is there anything else you'd like to add on to this conversation here?
Well, not much other than the fact that sometimes it's just physically impossible to be on, you're asked to be on another board and I can't do it, right? I could say yes, and then I end up missing half my board meetings because I have previous commitments. And so ultimately just, unless there's two of me, it can't be done. And yeah, you hate saying no sometimes, but you're just limited physically.
Yeah, definitely. And we have a few more minutes, and I know we could honestly keep on talking for hours. Like, you guys are all making such great points, and I'm learning a lot myself on how to maybe say no to some of those opportunities, or remember that I can do those opportunities again in the future when it comes to volunteering. So I just want to generally throw it out there. Is there any last comments any of you would like to say on this topic?
You had a couple questions there that I think are really important. One is about liability and why would you not join a board? Those two together, I know most of my boards are relatively large, although I have been in some small ones, like community type ones. But one of the things I do is definitely ask about directors and officers liability insurance. And pretty well, given that I have a reasonable corporation as part of my family, I won't join a board unless they do have some sort of insurance policy that protects the board members. And I push it. I want to sort of see it. I want to get positive confirmation that is in place. So that's one of the sort of hurdles that I have in joining a board now. Is that they have to have some sort of protection for the board members. And then also my other one is right now I tend to prefer boards that have paid staff on it, because I find when you're on the board for the local rowing association or something, you end up spending a lot of time out unloading boats and doing a lot of manual labor rather than board type things and governance type things.
Anything else, Mike, there?
I was just going to say I guess for me, serving on boards is a very rewarding experience, and I've heard it many, many times from other board members and directors that you get more out of it than what you put in, which sometimes you think, well, that shouldn't be the way it is, but it truly is a grasp of your industry. And like I say, from my perspective of being involved with the canola industry and previously barley, and relatively aware of the world that we live in when it comes to the operations of our industry. And yeah, it's just a very rewarding experience. I know it's not for everybody. I do understand that, but for the vast majority of people that I've interacted with and served with over the years, they've always thoroughly enjoyed it and talk about the rewards of serving.
Great. And Ashley, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, just that, I'm going to echo some of the stuff that previous panelists have said in terms of like, it truly is a great experience, and just getting to do some of that actual board work as opposed to maybe some of the manual work is a nice change. But I'm also going to remind folks who are, watching this and from the board side of things that, diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to be our strong suit. That's going to be a really big opportunity to help fill some of these gaps on these boards. And if you're struggling to get folks on these boards, it's time to take a look inward and figure out why, right? And so really dig into what some of those hurdles are, ask some of those tougher questions, and It's not just a lack of people. I know that there are lots of people out there, but it's what's stopping from those people from getting there. There's lots of great people in this industry. There's so much keenness around. It's how can we leverage it in a way that's successful for both parties essentially.
Thank you. And thank you guys all for being here. It was such a great discussion. And I think I know I personally could keep on chatting with you guys for hours, but unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. So thank you to Wayne, Mike, and Ashley for talking with me. And for those watching, thank you for tuning in. And if you missed part of today's live stream, don't worry. We'll have it available on demand on Facebook, YouTube, and our Seed websites. If you have any questions about the subject or ideas for future topics we should tackle, please send a message to Seed World's Facebook page or feel free to reach out to myself. Next week, my colleague Sonia Begeman will have some guests on to chat about overcoming imposter syndrome. So we'll hope you join us, and thanks, and see you next week.